In 1948, Truman doubles down on his fair deal, or the just idea of the New Deal. He proposes more reforms, including the first modern civil rights bill. Congress, which is controlled by Republicans, the other party, Truman's a Democrat, essentially ignores him. They just refuse to hear any of these bills. And Truman begins to be seen as weak and ineffective, particularly in light of the foreign affairs. The talk is that Truman is no FDR. FDR was a great man, but Truman just can't fill his shoes. At the Democratic National Convention, the mayor of Minneapolis, Hubert Humphrey, proposes a civil rights plank be inserted into the Democratic Party platform. A very powerful civil rights plank, actually. And Southern Democrats walk out of the convention. And now we have a split Democratic Party. Southern Democrats, or what they come to be called Dixiecrats, organize around South Carolina Governor Strom Thurmond, who runs on what's called the states' rights ticket. It has one policy. The states' rights ticket wants a constitutional amendment guaranteeing segregation, or at least the right for states to have segregation. Liberals are also frustrated by Truman's failures, and liberals reject the Cold War. They think the whole thing is essentially made up, that the Soviet Union is not a great threat to us, and that Truman is pursuing unnecessary foreign policy. And they support Henry Wallace. Now, Henry Wallace had been FDR's vice president from 36 to 1944, but Roosevelt had dumped him in favor of Harry Truman. Wallace is maybe the most progressive man in the government, and so he's very popular among liberals. So now we have 4 candidates running. We almost have a fifth when conservatives and Cold War supporting Democrats create the Americans for Democratic Action and try to get Dwight D. Eisenhower, the great World War II general, to run as their candidate, but Eisenhower declines. The Republicans nominate Thomas E. Dewey, the New York governor. Again, he had lost the last election. And it seems like there's no way Dewey can lose. Everybody agrees that Truman has no real chance. His party is split 3 ways. Democrats can choose to vote for Truman, the racist South Carolina Governor Strom Thurmond, or the super liberal Henry Wallace. Polls over the summer, polls were not taken very often, but they were taken a little bit, show Dewey with a huge lead. Truman insists he's going to win, insists he's not worried, although everybody else has given up on him. Truman decides to run by attacking Congress. He says this new Republican Congress is the do-nothing Congress. It just doesn't pass any bills, and they're the source of all of our problems. At the time, it was a remarkably inactive Congress, although our recent Congresses have been far more inactive than that one. He says that by refusing to pass his bills, they're hurting workers and leading to significant inflation. The Republican Party tries to get clever, and at their convention in 1948, they adopt a lot of pro-worker ideas into their plank. Truman's convinced that they don't mean this. They're just telling voters this to get their votes, and as soon as they win the election, they'll abandon all this pro-worker stuff. And so Truman does something quite politically brilliant. He uses the president's power to force Congress into session, which the president can do. He rarely ever does it, but Truman does it here. And he says, oh, you've said that you have all these pro-worker laws you want to pass. I've called you into session. Now you can pass them. I'll be happy to sign them. And then when the Republicans refused to pass anything, even though they had just had a big convention saying they supported all these ideas, Truman's argument that they're a do-nothing Congress that really doesn't want to help working people looks like it's true. And on the day of the election, the assumption is that Truman can't win, but he shocks everyone by not only winning, but winning fairly easily. He beats Dewey by 4.5% and wins, 114 more electoral votes. The Chicago Tribune had been so confident that Dewey would win, the Tribune is a conservative paper, that they had printed the headline before the results were in. And so we get this wonderful picture here of Harry Truman at his victory celebration holding up his Dewey Defeats Truman newspaper from Chicago. It's not just Truman that wins either. The Democrats take both houses back. But there's trouble for the Democrats in this election. If you look there at the South, you'll notice that Strom Thurmond wins 4 southern states. And those Dixiecrats will become a restless element of the Democratic Party in the elections to come. Democrat Truman has won the presidency in 1948. And the Congress is also controlled by Democrats. But the Democrats in Congress are significantly to the right of Truman. So even though one party controls Congress and the presidency, Truman simply can't get anything he wants. What Truman does get is this. He gets the minimum wage increase all the way to 75 cents, which once you adjust for inflation is higher, something close to what it is today. He gets Social Security increased by 75% and adds 10 million new people to Social Security. His National Housing Act of 1949 builds 810,000 units of public housing. He gets long-term rent subsidies for the poor. He loses on national health care insurance, aid to students going to college, federal aid for college. And he also loses, fascinatingly, on the polio vaccine. The polio vaccine. We've developed a vaccine that will cure polio. And Truman says the government should administer this to every child in the country. His opponents call this communism. They say giving away the vaccine for free is what they would do in the Soviet Union, so we can't do that. And they force children, or parents of children, to pay for the polio vaccine. A civil rights bill is passed making lynching a federal crime, which is extremely important. It's proposed. It's extremely important because if it's a local crime, if it's a state crime, you could have, a racist judge, a racist jury, racist cops, or whatever. But it's a federal crime that goes to federal court. We can hopefully get around that. It would also protect voting rights for African Americans, which Democrats like because African Americans vote for Democrats, and end poll taxes. Finally, it would create an early version of what we think of today as the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission that ensures fairness in hiring practices. It has enough votes to pass, but Southern Democrats filibuster the bill, those Dixiecrats, of course, who are racist. Truman does, however, make government employment colorblind so that you can't use race as a factor in determining who to hire in the government. And he desegregates the military fully, so you have black soldiers serving in the same units with white soldiers, as we see in the picture there. He uses the Department of Justice to begin to, for the first time in American history, enforce the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And the military really becomes one of the first institutions in American society to be truly integrated, the military and baseball, apparently. The Supreme Court also gets in on this. The Supreme Court by now, which is completely dominated by FDR and Truman appointees, in Shelley v. Kramer in 1948, it stops the courts from enforcing racially segregated neighborhoods. And so it begins the long road of ending housing discrimination.